Okay.
Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and I've got an excellent guest on. Her name is Christine Morrison. She's the author of the book, Judicial Criminals, that was written in 2018. And she exposes family court judges and their abuse of power. We're going to have a discussion about this because a lot of people need to know about this book. It's a wealth of information, and it really is the link to legal system abuse. And Christine, would you want to add to the legal abuse that goes on in this? It's pervasive in this system.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I wrote the book Judicial Criminals with the subtitle, The Greatest Fraud Upon American Society, America's Legal System. It's a complete failure of America's legal system. My story specifically is exposing family court judges' abuse of power, exercised with no accountability, responsibility, or morality, and attempting to obtain redress for victims to compel reform. My webpage is judicialcriminal.com, and I encourage you to take a look at it because I summarized my book on my webpage. And my story starts with exposing Michigan family court judges' abuse of power and blowing the whistle on the connivance between power and politics. And I put a case up there that says that a party must obey an order entered by the court with proper jurisdiction, even if the order is clearly incorrect, or the party must face the risk of being held in contempt. And that includes losing your life, liberties, and property illegally. And I list the facts 1 through 6 that show that you will and can lose your life, as Thomas Ball and Walter Scott and many others. And you will lose your property, your home, and all your contents illegally, and all your liberties, because once you enter these tribunals, they don't disclose to you that you have absolutely no constitutional rights, the Bill of Rights, statutory rights, that you are defending yourselves against a systemic criminal enterprise of black robe predators, attorneys, and all the other experts in this system. They put hidden shackles around your wrists, your ankles, they put a rope around your neck, and it's all illegal and criminal. It's the greatest fraud perpetrated upon a child support payer, a non-custodial parent, that these experts have created a motherless and fatherless society. And my story takes place it starts in Macomb County Circuit Court, Family Court, where the first judge entered 3 non-consented to judgments, which came from a settlement agreement that I never consented to, never signed, and it was wrong per the court transcript. They then illegally subjected me to parental alienation, unjust, inappropriate child support enforcement, bench warrants, no bond, the loss of my home and all contents, professional licenses, and retirement accounts by an attorney malpractice trial, and life savings for a parental right that I had prior to entering this court to get a divorce that was an annulment. And the settlement agreements that they entered should be void ab initio. And Michigan Democratic State Representative Stone read my book and responded to me in November of 2019 and said, with all that said, it is still well documented that either recourse is an uphill and sometimes impossible battle for a person when looking for judicial recourse, and is in need of reform. Now, in November of 2019, I gave my book to Senator McMallory, Congressional Rep Andy Levin, and Democratic State Rep Stone, and I attempted to give it to another senator. I believe her name was Baker, who said to me that this wasn't her field. And I said, this is massive, pervasive fraud in Michigan's legal system. Now, our public servants are supposed to be representing the best interest of the public, which they don't. They do not respond to you when you give them substantiated evidence. So going back to the settlement agreement that I never consented to, never signed, and it was wrong per the court transcript that was taken under oath, I have listed fact number 1, there was no client consent or modification to the original or the 2 amendments of the judgments that were entered. When you look on my court docket sheet, there's falsification because August 19th of 1997, it says consent. September 2nd, it says amended consent. September 8th, it says second amended consent. There was never any consent. So that was in 97. Now I'm in front of a second judge, May of 1999, where I tell him on court record that I never consented to this judgment. I never signed it. And he told me I'm objecting to items that have been entered 2 years ago and it's entitled consent. So my attorney in October of 2000 filed a motion to conform the judgment of consent, which was not a consent, placed on the court record to conform to the consent. That judge, the chief judge, took it under advisement in October of 2000 and never issued a ruling. So in August of 2001, I had an attorney malpractice trial. And in the trial, on court record, the defense counsel said he'd stipulate that the clients did not sign either amendment or the original. That should be the malpractice. I was told by that Chief Judge Massaroni in Macomb Circuit Court that if there was an issue, I should have filed an appeal. Well, I hadn't. Why should I, the victim, have to file a costly appeal when the state fraudulently enters a non-consented to settlement agreement? Why should the victim have to do that? I had an attorney malpractice trial that I won in Oakland County Circuit Court, Michigan, and the attorney who I sued then appealed it to the higher court, and the Michigan Supreme Court then reversed it in the attorney's favor. I had won over $220,000, but keep in mind, people don't understand this. The trial cost in excess of $220,000. Now, why should a victim have to have an attorney malpractice trial in order to get a settlement agreement corrected that the state entered fraudulently and incorrectly? Mm-hmm. So this, 1997 to 2009, in this trial, going back to this trial, this attorney was asked, why did you enter and approve that judgment? He said, whatever a judge says to you, you do. If the judge says go sign it, sign it. If the judge says don't sign it, don't sign it. You know that. I do what the judge tells me to do. Now, if you think about that, is that a conspiracy now of the state to defraud me of my natural God-given right to my only child? Mm-hmm. I mean, what about deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy to deprive rights under color of law, and honest services, which there are none in these tribunals? Then in October of 2019, think about this, in a case in the Michigan Supreme Court oral argument, the Michigan Chief Justice McCormick, October 2019, said in the Foster versus Foster case, normally we do not permit collateral attack on an underlying judgment. Think about that. Here the state issues a non-consented to settlement agreement, which they reduce to judgments. They did this. This is their error at my expense, right? The victim of legal system abuse. With her saying that, it tells me, normally we do not permit collateral attack on an underlying judgment. So therefore, any judgment that the state enters that's fraudulent, corrupt, against the Constitution, the statutes, any and all rights, they are not going to correct, because in my case, my attorneys had filed multiple appeals, not with one error in the statute or laws, multiple errors that were all dismissed and hidden perversely in the appellate courts. So in the Foster versus Foster case, it took 20 years for a ruling to come that said that the state divorce courts nationwide have been issuing illegal court orders regarding veterans' obligations in divorce proceedings, where the greedy states have been taking their disability compensation, which was federally protected under law. Now, Cole Stewart, who was a parent, lawyer, legal activist, and former partner at a large international law firm, said, it's time to recognize family court for what it is, a corporate crime ring raiding parents and children of financial and psychological well-being, devouring our children's futures. Further, in a lawsuit, he said, lawyers illegally conspire with judges to steal from parents as part of a racketeering criminal enterprise, and he brings over 30 claims of federally indictable crime, including civil rights violations, fraud, obstruction of justice, which are federal crimes even for judges. In another case, the Adkins case, which was a Michigan case, the attorney says this unconstitutional parental intrusion by family courts in this country has caused financial ruin and emotional distress for post-judgment parents and children that ultimately have a negative effect on government fiscal. And that's fact number 2 on my webpage. It's titled 4-D, the federal incentive payments that these state courts get back under title from the Social Security Act. Now, if you think appeals work, he says, family court system acts as a black hole where the presumption of innocence is a fairy tale, make-believe laws rule the land, and successful appeals are a unicorn, creating a safe haven for unfriendly parents and family court dictators to reap material wealth, and any unfortunate family that enters its boundaries finds themselves at a point of no financial, emotional return until the children age out of the system. You are put in a lion's den at feeding time, and there is no escape. They destroy you completely, your psyche, your soul. They take all your finances illegally, and there is nobody in this system to help you. Once you enter, you have no concept of how brutal it is. It's not even a matter of a seasoned attorney. The system is massive, pervasive fraud. To me, it's like child stealing, kidnapping, holding your child, holding the parent hostage, ordering them to pay for the federal Title 4-D reimbursements, which is fact number 2 on my webpage, which I have the 40 years from 1976 to 2018, the $616 billion in collections. And then for every dollar the state courts collect, they're reimbursed between $1 to $11. They call it cost effectiveness. Do the math on that over 40 years. They don't tell the people that. And the Washington Office of Child Support Enforcement is supposed to conduct an audit of each state's program at least every 3 years. I asked for the audit results and there was no response. And I asked through Congressman Levin's office. So family court is not about the best interest of the child. It is about the best interest of the divorce family law industry, which is a $50 billion industry, and the state's treasury to maximize federal child support incentives under Title 4-D. And Michigan and the other states are obtaining federal funding for its child support enforcement agency program under false claims of compliance with federal civil rights law and the United States Constitution. And I have this documentation from Melanie Cummings that you can read. And divorced parents are a discriminated, targeted debt ower group being denied basic constitutional, civil rights, and human rights by being subjected to draconian, tyrannical state proceedings, depriving them of any and all rights. There is no equal protection. Child support is a crime against humanity only for financial gain. So they are using our children and a parent for a billion-dollar fraud industry that these experts have created for themselves and their pocketbook. It's the only motivator here is money. So under fact number 2, I have the 3rd judge in my case in Macomb County Circuit Court, Judge Jokic, who in 2008 issued a judgment against me for retroactive child support. The federal law did not allow her to do what she did. So she ordered me to pay over $33,000 and an additional attorney fee award of over $12,000. My attorney filed an appeal based upon the law, and of course it was dismissed. When he filed the appeal, it was in January 2009, this judge ordered a bench warrant for my arrest, the retroactive child support award of over $33,000, attorney fee award of over $12,000, and a denial of a cash appeal stay bond. The Michigan Supreme Court then dismissed the appeal and the monies illegally were released. So in 2019, there's a case where California family law judges who do not follow the guideline formula are in for reversal. The conclusion was that by disregarding these facts and calculating child support, the trial court failed to comply with the statutes governing this highly regulated area of law and therefore abused its discretion. Well, my child support started in July of 1998, which was in front of the chief judge. My ex submitted, along with his attorneys, fraudulent income, let's say $400 or $500 a week, where his corporate returns in the attorney malpractice trial showed over $2 million in a 4-year period. So There is concealment of finances that are dismissed with knowing indifference and willful blindness. They do not follow the statutes, the codes. They follow no laws whatsoever. They impute against you whatever you want. I became disabled, and it took me over 3 years to get a child support modification. During that 3-year period, I was told you either pay this money, the $275 a week, or you're going to jail. So I became disabled in December of 1998. 3 years, think about that. In the 3-year period, I had been requesting a child support abatement to be denied continuously. So what they did is in July, they issued a no bond warrant for my arrest because I had no incoming income, and I stopped paying. After that, they then seized, they then in July of 1999, they did a ex parte seizure of my home and all contents. They did a seizure, a sealing, an inventory, setting aside of a quick claim deed to a third party, and immediate possession of my home. They put a lien on my home. And then 22 days later, they had an ex parte motion requesting the court to sell my home. All this was done ex parte with no notice to me. So my attorney filed a motion for abatement of child support. I had been disabled since December of 1998, and a rehearing of the orders for September 1st and 2nd in 1999. That appeal was dismissed, and this judge took under advisement the lien on my property, which was against the law. Once again, everything that they did was illegal and criminal. And the quick claim deed, they then went after my stepmother, my family, and did a show cause on my stepmother to give the quick claim back to me with no notice. So that's all on my webpage. Then under fact number 4, I talk about the state being the parental alienators. In June of 1999, opposing counsel files an ex parte motion to suspend and or restrict my parenting time. Well, obviously the motion was heard, but my attorney and I weren't in court. So an appeal was filed on that. It took 2 years for me to see my daughter after that. That's what they do to you. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, I had the no bond bench warrant issued. I had the seizure of my home. I had no parental rights, and I was disabled. And I, in 2001, had the attorney malpractice trial. So, go ahead.
Oh, that's a lot. And I know you mentioned the toll it takes on a parent's emotional well-being, but look at the toll it took on your health.
Yes, they could care less because the only motivator for them is money. Right. And in the report from the Office of the Child Support Enforcement in Washington, the 40 years where they list the amount of money that they've taken from the parents, there is no mention that I could find of the custodial parents, the punishment to them for violating parenting time directives. There is no punishment for the parents, even though there is laws for that. They do not care about the parent-child relationship. They only care about what's financially in their best interest. And if you think about it, why are all the experts just attorneys and the people in the system? Ordinary citizens have absolutely no say in society policies. So therefore, they write the laws protecting themselves with no protection for the parent or child. And with this Title 4-D, people need to read the Melanie Cummings testimony. There's a link there where you can see how the states cleverly then take all the billions of dollars they receive and use it for social entitlement programs. So you're used for that. I don't know of any other group of people in society that have all their rights, liberties taken from them illegally. Any other ower does not have felony bench warrants issued for their arrest, does not have their home and all content seized from them illegally, does not have their children taken from them. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And there is nobody in America that is stopping these abuses against the child support payers. I believe these crimes against humanity should be heard in the International Criminal Court for what they do. And I suggest that people get together, the groups, file a complaint to the United Nations and the countries that are part of the ICC, that they should be filing a complaint with signatures from all the groups in order to get this heard in front of the International Criminal Court, because it will never end, because the states are looking for money for their social entitlement programs at the expense of the taxpayers and child support payers. And I also think, I would say, they should be charged with domestic terrorism for what they do to the parent and child. And the children should be taught in grade school that this is the reason why you weren't able to see your parent, because we did this to your parent for money, just for money. And they should be charged with domestic terrorism, threatening you continuously for endless years, and they're unrelentless. In fact, I had bounty hunters after me after the attorney malpractice trial, because the attorney then, after the Michigan Supreme Court reversed my win, the ruling of attorney malpractice, he came after me, ILO, and illegally liquidated $80,000 from my individual retirement accounts because he was awarded some court costs. Now think about that. So then I never forget having a black SUV chase me on the Michigan roads because I had a bounty out for me. The judge in Oakland County issued a bench warrant for my arrest because I did not show up for a creditor's exam. How many other people in society have had no bond felony warrants issued, bounty hunters after them, and have had the Walter Scott faith where he had a felony warrant? A cop pulled him over in South Carolina for I think it was a tail light, and he ran and the cop shot him. That's what they subjected my life to with the 4 bench warrants they issued for my arrest. These perpetrators, perpetuators, usurpers should be brought to justice in the International Criminal Court. This crime ring needs to be abolished. And this needs to be taught in history, that United States is foremost in crimes against humanity, hidden. Why have none of our congressional representative U.S. reps in the House, anybody, the news, the media reported on these abuses against an innocent parent? Why is a parent not informed that these predators are going to defraud you until the child ages out of the system? Why are the public servants not accountable for allowing these abuses to continue in society? It is a complete failure for the legal system to provide effective avenues of redress and relief for the role of the judges, attorneys, and experts in the persecution and psychological torture and financial crimes that they impose upon a victim through persistent legal system abuse. It's ironic that in July 2020, the U.S. Commission on Unalienable Rights acknowledges that the most important obligation of the U.S. government under the Constitution is to protect its citizens' unalienable rights. Even though the United Nations said that they were going to hear the issue and allowed submission of America's judicial impunity, they did not respond to that. Now, if you think about it, Nazi criminals responded to the positive laws by using the excuse, we were just following orders, it was the law. Well, you know something? A God-given right, your child should not be victimized with the parents under this perverse, massive, pervasive fraud system for money. We should create a court in America as the International Criminal Court for victims of legal system abuse. It's not only in family law, it's in probate courts, stealing from the elderly, knocking on their door, incapacitating them, and taking everything, all their assets from them. And it's in the federal courts. February 17th, 2020, on my webpage on the sidebar, there's going to be a podcast about America's broken legal system. You might want to listen to that. The problem is all these books that are written, there's no resolution to any of this in society. It's a society of fraud and theft. Where is our public servants? Where are they? What are they doing to protect the citizens in this country, their unalienable rights? What are they doing to protect the taxpayers? It's appalling to me to hear the news today talk about the illegal immigrants and their families being separated. What about the taxpayer, the parent and children that have been separated because they've created this perversion called divorce court? What about the taxpayers? There's nobody that has spoken about the taxpayer being defrauded to this extent. And judges are the final arbitrators of our rights and liberties, and they turn out to be the biggest violators, along with the attorneys and the experts, of all civil rights and human rights. They're the only violators because you cannot fight them. No ordinary citizen has millions to spend on a system that dismisses any and all appeals. You can go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, it's the same dismissal and fraud. And you can read on the federal judiciary on Richard Codera's site. It's well laid out. The entire system is massive, pervasive fraud, and there's no way out except death. And then they take everything from you. And again, illegal and criminal, no way out.
And you had said there's no remedy at law. This can happen to anyone.
That's where the media that is biased needs to be telling the story. We need a group of people to present podcasts for victims of legal system abuse. We need United States congressional oversight and hearings with citizen testimony. We need podcasts with people telling their stories and what the states or federal courts have done to them. If the Catholic Church has been held accountable after thousands of years. It's time for all legal systems globally to be held accountable. It's time to open up the doors of it's time for a national state audit of all state and federal appellate courts, and the people that have been defrauded need to be restored. These judges need to be held accountable for what they've done, along with the attorneys in this system. It's just unbelievable fraud. And I would also suggest that Congress initiate federal and appropriate state legislative hearings, as well as criminal investigations, to fairly and impartially confirm the extent to which Americans and U.S. citizens have been subjected to legal system abuse facilitated by unchecked judicial and attorney misconduct for the past 50 years. The door needs to be open. Why are they non-accountable? The laws say differently, but they're applied in reverse. You are, when you enter these tribunals, you're the criminal now, defending your life, liberty, and properties against these perpetrators of fraud. And it's endless. There's no place for the person to go.
Right. And that has caused a lot of suicides as well.
Yes, yes. Walter Scott, Thomas Ball, and children. And look at the fatherless and motherless society. Take a look at the children. Take a look at society. This is what our public servants have caused, such dysfunction.
Right. And you have written this magnificent book that you have sent to public servants that have not given you really any response.
None.
And which is, you know, a disgrace. They could at least send a letter of some sort.
I have sent it to law schools, professors, judges, congressional reps, to Senator Grassley. I have a list where I have sent the book with no response, none. So that's America's broken legal system, which should be just called massive predators that are uniquely talented human right and civil right violators in a massive, pervasive fraud system. That's what you're faced against. And again, it's not a matter of any experienced attorney. The whole system is a fraud. I mean, they have court rulings without subject matter jurisdiction. They enter fraudulent settlement agreement. They rely upon known false testimony to determine legal proceedings. They suppress material evidence. And then you're forced to pay illegal compensation to the interested parties. There's perjury. There's false statements, and then they retaliate against those who lawfully complain. For instance, they'll issue a gag order against you. You can file, a federal suit against them, and see what happens. It's dismissed. I mean, it's just endless what they do to you. All illegal. If these attorneys could, they would be taking animals' offspring away from them for money, because they do nothing in the best interest of any child or parent. And foster care, take a look at the reimbursements to the families that are, quote, foster parents, right? Everything boils down to how much money somebody can steal from you.
Exactly. And people don't realize that they're sitting ducks. This can happen it happened to you, it happened to me. They don't realize.
You are forced to enter these tribunals. Never in my lifespan would I have connected or asked a single expert in their courts for any sort of help, let alone paying for them to defraud me for 15 years endlessly. Never would I have done that. And since the state officials' hands are just too deep in that monetary cookie jar to stop their own abuse, it just says it all. It's a corporate crime ring, it's federal racketeering, and there's no one to stop them. Nobody. You can reach out to all your public servants and you will get a no response, a generic no response, including from the Attorney General Granholm. When my attorney wrote her a letter of the corruption and the appeals we filed and them being dismissed, she says, well, your only remedy is in the appellate courts. There's no remedy, absolutely none. And there's no rule of law. You have absolutely no rights, none.
Right. And you and I have both sent our books to the DOJ with no response.
Of course not. No response. And I sent a complaint to them years prior, summarizing the issues that I have on my webpage. No response. And I send them not only one complaint, two complaints with a binder with maybe 200 pages in it, in legal fashion, so they could see the criminality of what these tribunals are doing. No response. In fact, I called the DOJ asking for the binders back. Each and every time I called, they knew who I was. They knew me. And yet I did not get the binders back. So therefore, the laws are a fraud in this country. And there is no remedy for anybody. The government needs to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to protect the citizens' rights and property. Instead, they do the opposite. And no matter what the statute says, it doesn't matter. They follow no rule of law.
What would you tell a person that say is a friend or so is telling you that they're considering a divorce and they've had it with their spouse, what advice would you give them?
I'm going to tell them that they are going to lose perhaps their life, liberties, and property. And it's going to be an endless amount of years until the child ages out of the system, that no appeal, there's no remedy, there's nobody to help them. And it is what it is. There's nobody. That's why I believe a consolidated complaint to the United Nations and then the countries that are part of the ICC should be filing a criminal complaint. And it needs to be heard. And United States, again, is foremost in crimes against humanity and what they do in these tribunals to a innocent parent and their child or children. And they should be charged with domestic terrorism, threatening you continuously, jailing you, promising you jail when you become disabled with no money, assessing, imputing improper income, child support against you, and allowing the other party to, present fraudulent income and collect. And in my case, for 15 months, my daughter didn't live with him. The friend of the court paid him from my child support account. How egregious is that? On top of having a settlement agreement that was non-consented to and fraudulently entered by the state of Michigan, not once, but 3 times, and then being told, oh, you have to appeal it. Well, I had an attorney malpractice trial, $220,000 reward reversed, and then the trial cost more than $220,000. And then that attorney liquidates illegally $80,000 from my individual retirement accounts. And there's nobody to help you. My public servant representatives have my book, and I have asked them to present it to the United States Congress for oversight hearings for victims of legal system abuse. No response. What does that tell you? And these people are attorneys. They know what the law is. So the law is a fraud in America. The statutes that they create, the lawmakers should be held accountable for their draconian statutes that have harmed the public for a long time. And child support payers, again, are the most discriminated group in this country. There's no other debt ower group that has this happen to them illegally.
And this is, I'm going to point out with some, maybe not all, but an attorney I dealt with, I was waiting in the office area for, I guess, one of his partners to come down. And it was right before a child support hearing. And he came past me because I was sitting in the chairs. And he goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I guess I'm waiting to get screwed over." And he just goes, "Yep, and he just went right into his office. So they don't care about you.
Know. The attorneys, they all know. And that's why America is foremost in crimes against humanity. The whole legal system is broken and will defraud you because they are experts, uniquely talented experts in human right and civil right violations. But I encourage everybody to connect on Facebook and all the social media sites before the big three tech giants censor everybody from presenting the truth. They do not want this out there. So please network judicialcriminal.com to all the social media groups and do it daily before everybody is censored, because that is what is coming in society. And whistleblowers will be punished immensely, like Edward Snowden and Julian, right? Those people, whistleblowers, are not pardoned for telling truth and presenting fact and evidence. They are punished. Everything is taken away from them, just like child support payers, all illegal. So think about that. You need to network immediately and continuously and keep doing it and not let up, because real soon we are going to be censored. And I encourage everybody to read on my webpage on the sidebar, the very third article down, which was written December 11th, 2020 by a independent United Nations special reporter, Alfred Zayas. He writes in his Human Rights Corner, "In a democracy, the citizen must demand genuine policy choices and a right to shape that policy. Voting for corporate figureheads is not democracy." I encourage everybody to read his article because I agree with what he says in there. Censorship is coming. So we need to act fast and immediately. We need to group together. People need to think about how all groups write to the United Nations and other countries get involved for the International Criminal Court. We are going to be censored completely. Truth will never prevail in society.
Christine, is there a Me Too movement going on in regards to legal issues, abuse?
Not that I know of, but there needs to be. That's why I'm saying that we all need to connect, and maybe we should write a Me Too movement for America's broken legal system fraud. We need a Me Too movement. We need to do something like the sexual assaults. We need a Me Too movement. We need it out there. The media is not going to help us. We need to stand together as a nation. We, the people, the 99.9% need to get together for a movement. We need to be and have our voices heard, meaning we need to be heard and we need to be able to present policy to make change in society. It shouldn't be, a small group of people that decide bad statutes for us, to jail us, to prosecute us.
Is there anything you would like to add before we part?
I would say people need to start networking on the social media sites before we're censored. I think it's really important. They need to read the article by Alfred Zayas so they understand. And contact me. I have a contact box on my webpage. My web site, again, is judicialcriminal.com. Let's get together. Let's create the Me Too movement. Let's do podcasts with victims of legal system abuse. Let's get the stories out there because it's a national crisis what has happened in these courts, tribunals against the public.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. It's just going on far too long when Congress installed family court back in 1962.
Right. And it's a systemic criminal enterprise for the attorneys and the black robe predators. It's a predatory system for all of them for money. They indirectly steal from the parent and child their life savings. They take everything from them in these perverse courts and their actions. And they need to be held accountable and brought to justice, these perpetrators, usurpers. And there's no accountability. There's none, and there's nobody to help you. And again, it's not a matter of a seasoned attorney because all appeals are, dismissed. So whatever laws are written, they may sound beautiful, the Constitution. The reality is it's the opposite of what is written. You are defending your life, liberty, and property against these usurpers.
Mm-hmm.
They are, again, uniquely talented, gifted human right and civil right violators, and you cannot get justice. It's not about winning, it's about getting justice. There's no equal protection under the law. The whole system is massive, pervasive fraud that you're up against. You cannot get justice, period.
And parents need to know this. When they start thinking about divorce, they have to think about what's going to happen to their kids.
I understand why people expatriate to get out of this country, because this child stealing for Title 4-D, revenue reimbursement, the billions that these courts have received to pay for their social entitlement program, and holding the innocent parent hostage to pay for this massive pervasive fraud. Read the Melanie Cummings under fact number 2 on my webpage. Read her pages and you will understand it real well. The unconstitutional actions of these courts and the reasons why they do what they do. And again, our public servants will not help you. They all are aware and have known for decades about this massive, pervasive fraud.
Definitely.
But the herd sticks together.
Right. And I encourage everyone to go to Christine's website. It's just an extensive webpage.
Judicialcriminal.com.
That's right.
Judicialcriminal.com.
And I also have that in my notes that people can look at. And I want to know, would you want to come back on again sometime?
Sure. Let's get people to network and let's get all the groups together if we can. Think about a Me Too. Where are the attorneys? Where are the whistleblower law firms, the attorneys, the law professors, the public servants to help victims of legal system abuse? Why don't I see on national television, have you been defrauded in family law court? We are here to help. There's nothing. No mention of it, no nothing. Where are the people to help the victims of legal system abuse in this country. Let's educate the people of the reality of what's going on. I mean, this is worse than the wars. This is hidden, perverse crimes against humanity in these tribunals, what they're doing. It's no different than the world wars. I mean, especially when the Nazi criminals, as they were called, brings up, when they were called to answer crimes against humanity, they bring up the concept of positive law. We were simply obeying the law. We were following orders. Well, there's something called, natural law, a parent and child. It's unnatural to separate a parent from their child. The Scandinavians don't have divorce court or divorce lawyers to defraud a parent and child. There shouldn't be these courts in this country. It should be arbitration. It should be joint legal physical parenting.
Mm-hmm.
The parents figure out 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, whatever. And if you don't want that, then there's a different common sense arrangement. It's not having attorneys have a $50 billion industry per year, and then the state courts maximizing out on federal child support incentives to pay for their social entitlement programs. And, for instance, somebody in the state that has been collecting, let's say, temporary aid to needy families or disability or whatever they collect, the state in Michigan has created what they call a ladybird deed. And that's to protect the state from coming after the people that have been collecting, let's say, Medicaid and aid. That's to protect their assets so that the state does not take a house that was given to them. But a child support payer has felony warrants, prison, their home and all contents, their occupational licenses, and endless litigation enacted upon them with no protections in the law. There are protections, but nothing is followed because the system is massive, pervasive fraud. That's all it is.
And I thank you so much for coming on Slam the Gavel to inform the public that this is such a disgrace in what you have been through, and you're still standing. I'm grateful for you for writing this book.
And I'm still asking my U.S. congressional leaders, state representatives, what are you going to do? This case, what are you going to do? You have the evidence in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
What are the legislators going to do, the lawmakers, all of them? Are they just going to do absolutely nothing and just business as usual? That's what they're doing. Business as usual for the legal industry of fraud.
And thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Mary Ann Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption and Cry Out for Justice. Please join us again. And we will have Christine on again, and we will be educated some more. So I thank you again, Christine.
And thank you, Mary Ann, for getting the message up.
Thank you.
Out.
Definitely. Yeah. And we'll talk.
Okay. Righty.
Goodbye. Bye.